Gold Rush Girl, chapter 26. When we approached our tent, I saw Thad sitting on the ground waiting. As soon as he saw us, he scrambled to his feet. "I'm here," he called. As we drew near, Senor Rosales realized he had customers waiting at his cafe. "Un momento, I'll be back," he said, and he went off to serve them. "Come out of the rain," I said to Thad, and went into the tent. I sat down on our box table. Thad sat on Jacob's bed. Facing him, holding my arms tightly about my chest, I poured out everything I knew, what Sam had said, how kind Senor Rosales was, but that the police offered nothing, at least not for a few days. But by then, I added, it might be too late. Once again, my fears were streaming. Thad listened open-mouthed. When I finished talking, he said, "You really think Jacob got crimped?" "I do," I cried. "I don't know what else to believe. Jacob just wouldn't go away. I know that. Someone stole him, and if Sam is right, I have to find him fast." "Nice that kid Sam told you." "It was, except he asked me not to say anything about him, and I did." "Who to?" "Senor Rosales, the police chief, you. Being upset makes me stupid. I hate being stupid," I fairly shouted. "I should never have left Jacob alone." I smeared the tears from my face. Thad shifted about in discomfort. Then he said, "All right then, what are we going to do about it?" I heard "we" and was very grateful. I said, "I have to go to the cove and search Rotten Row." "There are hundreds of ships," Thad said. "Dad," I cried, "I have to find him." I think I was yelling at myself. Thad looked at me, got up, and said, "Okay, let's go." I was not going to argue. "Un momento," I said, and hurried out of the tent to the cafe. Senor Rosales was working, cooking, and serving meals to a line of men. "Lo siento," he called to me. "Thad said he'd go right now with me to the ships." "Excelente. I'll join you when I can." By the time Thad and I headed downhill, it was late afternoon. He, as usual, said little, and I was spent of words. If anything, his impatient, long legs carried him faster. I was fine with hurrying, just working hard to breathe. The rain had stopped, but the wind was astir, making the air cold. Would San Francisco ever be warm? As we rushed along, I kept my eyes on the cove ships and had to admit what everyone was cautioning. There were so many. And a fair number of them were huge. It truly was overwhelming. But it was also maddening to think that by gazing upon Rotten Fleet, I, in all probability, was looking at Jacob being hidden, yet I couldn't know which ship held him. How then to begin? How to pick the first ship to search? I was reminded of something I once read. If you look at everything, you see nothing. Then I told myself, I'm doing something, and struggled to soothe myself by thinking, it's better doing than dithering. I was desperate to begin, my nerves as tight as fiddles, though there was no music coming from me. When we reached the cove, Thad went right to the rowboat we had used down in the bay. Happily, both oars were there, but I also saw that the tide was rising, which could hinder rowing. We rowed the small boat into the water. The sound of it grating over the sand made me shiver. I scrambled onto the rowboat's center seat and snatched up the oars. "Where are we starting?" Thad asked as he gave another shove farther out and climbed into the stern. I looked over my shoulder at the mass of desolate ships and realized I wished that someone might just say, "Go to that brig, the one with the tattered flying jib just hanging from its bowsprit." Or, "There, that three-masted frigate with broken angel figurehead. Start there." Needless to say, no one said anything of the kind. Instead, I sat motionless, overwhelmed by what I was needing to do, while knowing that time was crucial and flowing fast like the tide. Thad came to my rescue. "Let's try that small one," he pointed. "See her on the edge?" I saw the boat he meant, a small vessel, not nearly as big as the others in the fleet. She had but one main mast, plus what they call a mizzen at the stern. Relieved to have a direction with which to begin the search, I began to row, though I was too fraught to labor well. Each time the oars hit the water, they splashed noisily, making us jerk forward so that my braids kept whipping around, bothering my face. I had to struggle to keep my hands under control. In fact, they were trembling. My eyes were suppressed tears. Thad impatiently held out his hands, telling me that he was willing to row. Annoyed, I snapped, "I can do it. Just tell me where to go. What kind of boat is it?" I asked, trying to ease the tension. "It's what they call a ketch," he said as we moved along with greater ease. "But bet she came down from Oregon. The sails are only halfway lowered. Her crew, 2, 3, they couldn't get off her fast enough. I looked around and saw the boat he meant. There was a sign tacked to the bow that read, "Off for riches, help yourself." We drew close. I used one oar to row our boat about until the stern bumped up against the ketch's hull. Thad stood, reached up, found a grip hold, and pulled us closer. "Jacob," I shouted. "Jacob, it's me, Tori. Jacob, Jacob." There was no answer. Thad grabbed a loose line and pulled. It proved long enough to tie our rowboat so as to keep her from floating off. "I'll board her," he said, and he reached up for the bulwark rail and began to haul himself up. "Wait, I'm coming too." I shipped the oars. As soon as Thad was on deck, he turned around and held out his hand. Unsteadily, in the bobbing rowboat, I grabbed it and pulled. Although awkward, the next moment I was standing next to him on the deck. The ketch was small and open, with most of her deck before the main mast. Many lines lay about, some looking like birds' nests, others coiled with care. A good number of tools, like a belaying pin and a mallet, were strewn about. An anchor line hung from her bow and kept her in place. I wondered why they bothered. She felt desolate and empty. The boat was odd to see. Though we knew that she had no crew and had been left behind, she had her full rig of sails. They hung limply from the two masts. The lower edge of the mizzen sail dipped into the water and was stained with green scum. There was a hatchway to some space below deck. "She's all here," said Thad. "Sign says we could take her and sail around the world. We should do it." "That's not why I'm here," I said, frustrated by his bantering. I went to the hatchway and leaned over it. "Jacob!" I called. There was no answer. Dim though it was, I could see deep enough below to be sure no one was there. I pulled myself up. "Not here," I announced. Thad said, "Let's try another ship." Chapter 27. We scampered off the ketch and back into the rowboat. I looked about, trying to decide where among all those ships to go next. Once again, the sheer number of them and their size fed my anguish, while the increasing dusk only added to my misery. It would be dark soon. "I'm betting on that one," said Thad, pointing to the nearest ship. She was a 2-mast brig, tattered gray sails sagging from her foremast, suggesting nothing so much as exhaustion. I began to row. Once close, I backed against the brig, stern first. The ship made our rowboat feel tiny. "Can we get on?" I said, looking up. The top rail was quite some ways above us. "I'm able," said Thad. "She's not that high. Just have to gaffle these rat lines." He grabbed the dangling web of ropes. They were like those loose ladders, and began to climb. In moments, he disappeared over the top rail, gone briefly before his head popped up. "Not hard," he called. I tied our rowboat to the brig and then followed him up to the deck. I worked my muscles, but I succeeded. Like the ketch, the brig's main deck was in complete disorder. She was not just derelict, but looked as if she had just been ransacked. For a moment, my spirit lifted. If other people had been on her recently, maybe they had brought Jacob here and left him. It was easy enough to see he was not on deck. We searched the deck structures, too. A few small cabins, which for the most part had been ripped open, some of the wood removed, I supposed for building in town. It didn't matter what these cabins had been used for. Jacob was not in them. We came to the companionway steps that led to the ship's lower deck. I lay on my stomach and stared into the blackness below. Cupping my hands to my mouth, I shouted, "Jacob! Jacob! Are you there? It's me, Tori!" No answer. I went down, even bringing myself deeper into the darkness. "Jacob!" I descended further, only to hold back. It wasn't just murky. The smell was foul. "Don't get lost there," Thad called. I went on. The darkness grew deeper. The stink grew worse. I began to hear a faint rustling, plus some high-pitched squeals. Something ran over my foot. "Ooh!" I cried and jumped up on a step, my body shuddering. "What?" Thad called. "Rats, I think." "Maybe you don't want to go anymore." "Jacob!" I yelled as loud as I could. "Are you here?" Other than a faint echo, there was no response. I retreated to the main deck and took a deep breath. Twilight had come. The city's hills were glittering with points of candles, lanterns, and cooking fires, as if stars had fallen and become stuck in its mud. Thad said, "Should have brought a lantern." I stood in full of ache, breathing hard with distress. I didn't know what to do. We'll come back tomorrow, said Thad. Not answering, I went to the rail and stared over at Rotten Row. The multitude of ships, massive, mute, and dark, seemed positively evil to me. I had no voice to speak. I wanted to cry. I didn't. Thad came up by my side. He's here somewhere. We'll find him. Hope, I managed to say, then added, thank you for helping. Yeah, he said, best friends. Then he said, better get back to the beach. Thad, I said, my father is due from the diggings. When? In a few days. Yeah, he said again. I wondered how many meanings that one word or sound had. What am I going to say to him? Just Jacob's gone? It's my fault? Sorry? Thad shook his head. According to Sam, you didn't lose him. Someone took him. It's horrible. What difference does it make? He's gone. Fumbling, working hard not to slip and fall amidst the deck clutter, we got off the ship and into the rowboat. This time, Thad took the oars. I sat in the stern, hugging myself against the chilled dents with frustration. Without talking, Thad kept looking over his shoulder as he rowed. As we drew in, I could see someone on the shore, as if waiting for us. It was Sam. He was standing there with a bugle under his arm. I was going over to the Mercury, he called as we drew in, when I saw people out in Rotten Row. I was wondering if it was you. Is this your brother? He meant Thad. I shook my head. My friend Thaddeus. I turned to Thad. This is Samuel. Sam. He's the one who told me about the crimping. Thad made a friendly nod, but in a way didn't say anything. Were you searching? Sam asked me. Just a couple of boats, but it got too dark. You need light. As Thad and I pulled the rowboat up to the beach, Sam stood there, as if not sure what to do. For a moment, Thad hung back. Then he went up to Sam and held his hand out. Thanks for telling Tori about the crimping, he added. I'm Thad. Sam shifted his bugle under his arm, shook Thad's hand, and nodded. It's not good, Thad said. Really think Jacob got kidnapped? Sam looked at me. You were in my tent. You notice how many beds there were? 3. One belongs to the brother I told you about. Thad said, what happened to him? One night he vanished from the Mercury, just like her brother. Whoa, said Thad. Didn't know for certain, but we're pretty sure. Disappeared in September. Crimped, not a trace of him. I stared at him. No idea where? Sam shook his head. Thad said, did you tell the police? They're not about to help colored folk. That's awful, I said, even as I recognized the weakness of my words. Sam said, that's why I told you about Castle. Don't want it to happen to your brother or anyone. Jacob's a kid, said Thad. He turned to me. How old is he? 10. I can't see what use he'd be. Ship boy, said Sam. Some people, let me tell you, they like to be waited on. Can make a man feel important. I heard his deep anger. Not knowing what to say, I turned my back on the boys and stared out at the Rotten Row ships. Faint as they were, I couldn't take my eyes from them. As I thought, Jacob is there somewhere. I hated them. You going to search some more? Asked Sam. Thad said, it's too dark. Sam said, I might be able to get a lantern at the Mercury. Take a few minutes. I turned about. Thank you, I said, grateful. But going on those ships at night, said Sam, it's dangerous. Then he lifted his bugle. I've got to work. I'll walk with you, Thad said. One thing, said Sam. I don't want Castle seeing me with you at the Mercury. He turned to Thad. She, he meant me. Explain who that is. Thad nodded. I felt a stab of guilt. Let's go then, said Sam. Sam, I called out. I made a bad mistake. What? I went to the police. I went to Chief Fallon. I thought he might help me find Jacob. I told him he must have been crimped. When he asked me how I knew, I was so upset. I let it slip that it was you who told me. The light might have been dim, but I could see Sam's face filled with anger. You told him about me? I nodded. Sam spun away. Mortified, I called, I'm sorry. It was wrong of me. I hope nothing bad comes of it. Me too, I heard Sam say. He was still not looking at me. To Thad, he said, come on, let's go. His voice had changed. It wasn't friendly. I felt awful. The two of them started to walk away. I wanted them to be friends. I could hear Thad say, that's ghastly about your brother. I'm from Maine, Bath. Where are you from? I got back into the rowboat and sat at the center seat. staring bleakly out over the cove. I was so angry at myself for betraying Sam, and I wondered if he would ever talk to me again. What if my talking to the police made more trouble for him? I thought of Jacob as well. Was he in a cabin on one of those ships? In the hole? Was he tied up? Did he have anything to eat? Did he know I was looking for him? There I was, 14 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was not upset, but mortified, deeply disappointed, not liking myself. I like to think of myself as older and wiser. I was older, maybe, but obviously not wiser. Is distress the best teacher? Or pain? I had both. I had the thought, does knowing you aren't wise make you wise? As I sat there, trying to sort out my emotions, I heard footsteps crunch on the beach behind me. Startled, I spun around.